Spectrovision Radio.
Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, the biggest podcast in the universe, where we talk about all the things they said weren't real. I'm Tom, and I'm joined by my BFFs, Mallory and Jordan. Hello, my friends.
Hello.
Hey, babies.
Today, we're going to talk about parasitic AI personas, an overview of Louisiana cryptids, and time crystals made visible at last.
That one's
Jordan,
mine.
why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. I realize this is sort of a contradiction, but as much shade as I throw on materialism, I've always been a pretty big fan of material science, as in how material itself behaves and what kind of cool stuff we can make with new kinds of material. To a large degree, this is what has continued to fuel my fascination with both the nuts and bolts brand of ufology and plasma as a potential substrate for consciousness, aka plasmoids. This is all by way of explaining why I gravitated toward this story about time crystals, which seem like they might be right on the front lines of material science. Here's the story. Physicists at the University of Colorado, Boulder, have discovered that they could sandwich a liquid crystal film between two glass plates coated with light-sensitive dye, then shine light through it to trigger the rod-shaped crystals to flip their orientation and start moving in a sustained rhythm through time, even when the environment changes. I read the article from Scientific American several times, and I'm still not quite sure how it works. But apparently, these observable ripples through the liquid crystal keep going for hours on their own, and they are observable. You can look at them with your eyes after they've been catalyzed by this initial force, such as the light-sensitive molecules of dye bumping into them. What's exciting is that after it gets going, the rhythm of the so-called time crystals isn't disrupted by external forces, so the repeating patterns maintain their tempo regardless of changes in temperature or light. When Nobel Prize winner Frank Wilczek first proposed time crystals in 2012, a lot of people thought it was impossible, partly because it would be like a perpetual motion machine, which we all know is impossible thanks to Newton's laws. While it's hard to say if the results of this experiment qualify as perpetual motion, they do seem to prove that it is in fact possible to make a time crystal. And I just have to say, real quick, that I've always been pretty dismissive of crystals as a topic of spiritual or metaphysical interest. Way too woo for me. But I keep hearing things that make it seem like there might be something to it. I don't know what, but something.
Okay,
Yeah.
So they don't stop rippling?
No, not for, like, they keep going for a while. And my sense is that this is the part that makes it not perpetual motion, because there's some kind of physics going on that keeps them moving for a period of time that is longer than it makes sense, but not indefinite. So it's not going to just keep going forever.
Okay,
so it's not a perpetual
indefinite.
motion machine, but it is more perpetual than you would think, because it's still going even after the sort of force has been applied, and then independent of or contradictory to other forces being applied. So yeah, I mean, a crystalline structure, we think of crystals as crystals because they maintain their shape and rigid form despite being poked basically by other things.
My questions are like, one, do they stop? And two, if they do stop, do they slow down like you would expect them to, like a pendulum? Like it's
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, because you're saying they continue in an unvarying tempo. And that's a wow for me, but for how long? Anyway, and what do we do with this apart from go like, hey man, you were right when you predicted time crystals. Good for
Turns
you.
out they're real. Well, I am immediately curious about like technological application. And this is one part that my immediate impulse, which I tried to resist, but I ultimately can't, was to make fun of them for suggesting that one of the applications would be to include it in currencies so that you could make paper money less counterfeitable. And I'm like, what century are we in? I'm sorry, guys. Paper money is not the future.
We don't use paper money.
Yeah, we don't. I think there's other security features that you could include. The idea of being able to create like a 2D barcode that would change over time and would be basically impossible to fake because you'd sort of set it here and then you couldn't. The provenance of an object would be easier. So maybe there's other things that you could sort of prevent from being counterfeit. Or verify in some way, like collector's items or paintings or art or something. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's a half-life. I feel like it's a stretch. I don't know anything. The article didn't go into specifics, but it is very, very cool. Crystals are weirder than we've been led to believe, is my main takeaway here.
Yeah, I would say that's how I feel too. I'm like, ooh, magic, which I always like. I love that feeling. That's my plebe reaction. Anytime I'm if somebody's even a little stumped, I'm excited about that. I won't lie, I'm kind of confused. It's like, okay, so to practically apply this, we need to have a certain type of dye and we need to smush it between two panes of glass
and zap it
and shine a particular light, and then magic happens and a crystal doesn't act quite like a crystal anymore in these very, very specific conditions.
My guess is this is partly just a discovery of a property of liquid crystal. And liquid crystal basically is very, very tiny crystals that are all sort of similar in a liquid. So it's not really liquid and it's not really solid. It's kind of something in between, like crystal slush. Anyway, and so there's a discovery of how this kind of material will behave in certain conditions that is outside of the norm of the way we expect material to behave. And that's really, really cool. So applications, I feel like, are always way farther down the road when you make this kind of discovery. It's like, oh, this material does this thing that like we didn't expect. And then at some point, somebody's going to be like, well, I bet you could do X, Y, or Z.
We can apply that to quantum computing.
Blah,
exactly.
Blah, blah.
Yeah. So what I'm fascinated by in terms of just what this says about crystals is that this is a crystalline thing. They're taking crystals and they're saying, if we take this substance and we put it in this format and we apply a stimulus here, it moves in this way that is really strange. And so what that suggests is that the physics of crystals is more complicated and sophisticated than we thought. And that's really awesome.
I mean, when I think of crystals, I think of an inert structure.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Not something that's moving around.
They use crystals in watches to keep times because you can essentially dictate how and they've done this they've done this for hundreds of years. Like, so we've known that if you take a very small crystal and make it part of the mechanism of a watch, it will keep that watch on time, which is amazing to me. I still don't understand how that works physically. To me, it seems like magic. So we already know that if you apply a little bit of energy into a crystal, you'll get a sort of amplification or a resonance of some kind. And this is kind of like that, but along a different dimensional trajectory, which is why it seems so cool and also so unique to or specific to like crystals, is that it's a different kind of amplification. So instead of like applying energy and seeing a waveform as long as the energy is applied, which is we're very familiar with that, it's tap it basically with some kind of force, in this case molecules of light sensitive dye, and then watch it take a moving shape and hold the movement. It is really, really cool. I don't know what else to say about it other than it's just purely fascinating. Like, there's no meaning here. It's just cool.
Yeah. I have a lot of crystal people in my life. You spend enough time in like makeup trailers on a film sets, I've been gifted many crystals and told what they would do for my heart and my energy and my chakras. I have them around. And so the idea that, I won't lie, I'm very skeptical as well, but I'm also kind of a maximalist spiritually and a omnivore, if that makes sense to people.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the differences between different crystals and whether, because right now we're just talking about like the root foundational kind of DNA of crystals, right? That's
well, I don't even know, because they didn't even talk about what the molecular, the chemical composition of the crystals that they used in the experiment. They didn't talk about that in the article. I'm sure I could research and find out more. But, I don't know what kind of crystals these were. And I also, once again, I don't even know if you could call them crystals, because it was a liquid crystal. So it wasn't even, it was like what you'd find in a calculator, like face or whatever, the way those old displays, or maybe even Kindles. I don't know if they use liquid crystal, but yeah, it's like there's something else.
Here's the synchronicity, which it just dawned on me. Before you showed up, Jordan, Mal and I were talking. Mal appeared. I said, wow, your hair is so Stevie Nicks today. And we talked about how much we love Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. And then I was talking about the song that Stevie Nicks wrote and re-recorded for the movie Practical Magic that I just loved, and I just thought it was perfect. And the name of that song is crystal.
Nice.
So everyone has an
Nice.
excuse to hear an absolute banger, if nothing
Yeah.
else. So, yeah, I don't
But
know.
listen to Stevie.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Definitely magic.
Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah.
magic.
Well, in the spirit of setting the tone for the show, I am applying my good energy for the rest of the show, and we'll see what shape it takes.
Ooh, yes. Are we ready to talk about more
Yeah.
cryptids?
Oh,
we were
always,
talking
yeah.
about the squonk last week, so
Yeah.
I'm on a bit of a tear at the moment. I have, over the course of working on this podcast and just actually having conversations over the past couple of years with you two, I've noticed that there are, I'm sure these aren't all the categories, but there are several categories of cryptid articles that are written, and they usually fall into my favorite and the preferred category is somebody saw something and people are talking about it. That's the best. That's the very best.
Yeah.
The step down from that is somebody's capitalizing on the fact that people have talked about this and there's an event or a banker's trying to raise money for a thing and it's in honor of the Loch Ness monster. So it's like the reason the news is happening is because of some kind of event that's being promoted or a spooky ghost tour or whatever. And then this, I would say, is my least favorite, which is like, I don't know why this was written right now. I guess maybe because Halloween approaches, but I am still delighted by what I read. I won't lie, because I was immediately like, here we go, another article where nobody saw anything and nobody's even having a party. But then I read about some of these specifics, and I won't lie, some of these are spooky. We're talking specifically, so this was written in the Shreveport Times last week, and we're talking specifically about Louisiana folklore cryptids. And, you know, folklore is cool and fascinating on its own. We were talking about with the squonk last week. And as far as we know, nobody's seen a squonk, but we continue to talk about it, which is its own type of phenomena. These ones, they kind of fall into different camps. So a lot of them are cautionary tales to scare children or keep people out of the bog, keep people from going too far into the swamps. So we'll talk about 4 today. We're going to talk about the Rougarou. We're going to talk about the Honey Island swamp monster, the Letiche, and the Feu Follet. I think I'm saying that. Follet, maybe? Follet? Anyway, the Rougarou is a Cajun Creole creature that's pretty much a werewolf. It's a werewolf shapeshifter, body of a man, head of a dog. Not going to lie, the picture from the article is sexy. So just be ready.
So for everybody with a dog man kink,
I
anybody
guess I'm
who's
Team
got,
Jacob.
anybody's got an Anubis kick.
Yeah, I mean, the dude is ripped. And he's a lumberjack. So his jeans are so tight.
There's a reason that monster romantasy is so hot right now.
Oh, man.
I mean, so this originates from the French Lougarou. So they also have some sort of werewolf creature. And it makes sense because there's all that French influence with in Louisiana. And this creature just searches for misbehaving children. It's your kind of classic folklore. Just keep kids in line and such. The Honey Island swamp monster is an ape-like creature that's gray or black. The fur is gray or black, red or yellow eyes, webbed feet, and smells like putrefied trash. I always love when there's a smell element. I think that's always nice. The folklore behind this one actually did make me gasp. It's a swamp monster that is supposedly a descendant of escaped circus chimpanzees from a
yay.
train wreck in the early 20th century. You never get something that rich with these. It's like, it's unknown. Maybe it's part dinosaur, or maybe something.
Yeah.
But this is like, no, these arrived and mutated into this ape-like thing that we
That's
now
Ninja Turtle
call-
vibes, man. I love that.
Isn't that great?
And that's the beginning of your animated feature. Right
Yes.
there. The train wrecking in the swamp
I
in
like
southern
that very
Louisiana.
much.
Wow.
The swamp is actually, I mean, this is a great place for stories and scary things because a lot of people think that the Honey Island swamp monster is just a giant alligator that roams the banks of the Pearl River, but other people aren't convinced. But alligators are scary, so
They are.
Scary enough.
we should be careful. And this is the only one, not the only one. There are two that people talked about having actual sightings for. I couldn't find any when I Googled the Honey Island swamp monster, but it was a very precursory search. I didn't see anything, but some people have apparently, according to the article, seen footprints. There were audio recordings and blurry photos. The Letiche is another one that made me gasp because it's spooky as hell. Which I'm appreciating. So it's Native American / Cajun in origin, 7-foot tall swamp monster, and described as the unbaptized or illegitimate babies abandoned at birth and raised by alligators. That's dark as hell. That is so dark.
Oh my goodness.
These bastard children.
Yeah.
Who alligators were the only ones that would take them in.
I mean, it sounds like the alligators do a damn good job, though. If they're like 7 feet tall, they are healthy
I guess
kids.
So. The other thing, too, they said that they tell travelers is that that the Letiche are around when you hear scratching on the bottom of your boat.
Oh, no, God.
Size travelers. Isn't that spooky?
That's so scary.
Also could just be reeds or things in the water, but honestly, that would be enough to terrify me.
Raised by alligators. I'm sorry, I'm a little stuck on this.
I know. We're talking.
I mean,
you don't get baptized, you go into the bog. You get raised by alligators.
They just pushing kids out on boats or something like.
I mean,
Moses,
I'm more
like
fascinated
It's
by
like
what
the
it says
changeling
about,
story, kind of, right?
Well, I'm more fascinated about what this says about alligators. Like, I mean, the alligators who are going to see a human baby and be like, that kid needs some help.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Right.
Alligators raising human babies is that's a wonderful stretch. That's a very optimistic.
Nothing says
stretch.
motherly love like an alligator.
Yeah.
Cold-blooded reptile.
My child.
Dinosaur-sized reptile.
Yeah.
I always
Gonna
did like
nuzzle a human
Joanna
baby.
from The Rescuers Down Under.
Oh, yeah.
That's a real deep cut for people who maybe have
Oh,
not
I'm
seen
familiar.
it.
I'm familiar. But I
she
don't think
was a
Joanna
friendly
would be
alligator.
raising any babies either. No, she was just eating eggs.
She was irresponsible, if I remember right. I remember liking her very much. The last Louisiana cryptid that was discussed in this article is the Feu Follet. And this one's chilling because first of all, it's basically the will-o'-the-wisp. I'm going to say this wrong. The will-o'-the-wisps. Will-o'-the-wisps, right? That's how it's said. Which is the sort of mysterious phosphorescent light phenomenon that is seen at night over swamps. And there are scientific explanations, but also like every culture has some spooky word for what it is. Like everybody thinks it's evil. And so that on its own kind of spooks me. Like I looked up the Aurora Borealis because that's another light phenomenon, right? And I was curious, like, what are the stories about the Aurora Borealis? They're almost all positive or kind of neutral, but everybody thinks that these lights are evil. like some of the terms are, let's see, foolish fire. Mm-hmm. Let's see, hinky punk, jack-o'-lantern. In Uruguay and Argentina, luz mala, which is evil light. And it's said that you should never follow these lights because they'll lure you into the swamp and you'll never come back. And we've talked about lights before that aren't over swamps, that don't have anything to do with the phenomena of swamp gas spontaneously combusting.
Australia?
That's what's happening.
Yeah, we talked about ones in Australia.
A couple months ago.
Yep.
But I find the evil lights, I think they're fascinating because, of course, there are explanations, basically, that marsh gas like methane or the light from bioluminescent organisms, all those things could be true. But there are a lot of stories about glowing evil lights. So I have a hard time believing, in similar ways where there are stories about ghosts that seem like they can be explained by commonplace things like carbon monoxide poisoning or gas leaks or things like that. There are also too many stories for me to think that they're all explained by the scientific explanation.
And to that point, I mean, I think the outlier is the unbaptized children raised by alligators. That seems maybe more folkloric. But like,
sure.
The other swamp monster sounds a heck of a lot like, the Florida skunk ape. And in fact, in general, Bigfoot lore is that the thing's stink really bad. Like they smell like hot garbage or like skunks. And or bear. I don't know if any of you all have ever smelled a bear. They
Gotten
reek.
close enough to
Not
smell
personally,
one.
no.
So that's consistent. Also, a lot of people report dog men. And another thing that we talked about, actually, British werewolves, but they seemed way more like dog men than werewolves, although I don't know if that's a distinction with much of a difference. So, like, yes, they have names that are, French Creole or whatever, but they seem to be consistent with a lot of other reports of cryptids from across the country and around the world.
I will say that when it comes to swamp gases or will-o'-the-wisps or these lights that happen as potentially because of the outgassing from swamps, it makes sense to me that all the stories are evil, because as far as what is the purpose of folkloric traditions, it's usually to pass on some sort of utility, some sort of wisdom that is useful. And I think that it seems natural to me to think that you would tell your kids and they would tell their kids, and you would always tell everyone, don't follow the lights. Because if you wander out into the swamp, there are 1,000 things that can kill you, including just drowning. And so if you are raised in an environment where that kind of thing happens, it seems like all of the stories would be like, stay away from these things. What is the strongest language I can use to tell you not to run after this stuff, because you'll just die? Whereas Aurora Borealis, what's it going to, it's beautiful, not dangerous, not going to hurt you. You can't follow it.
Some people think
There's
it's
no
a
way to
bad
follow
omen,
it.
or that it means war is coming, or that it's it's like this the ghostly atmosphere from dead babies. Actually,
you don't. Well, that's awful. But you don't have to tell your babies not to run after it. You don't have to be
exactly.
Like, don't run after those Aurora Borealis.
If you run far enough, you'll probably run off a cliff. So be careful staring at the sky while running.
Yeah. I mean,
just in general.
You don't want to be chasing stars either. Don't chase things in the sky.
I was having some similar thoughts as I was reading. Just as far as why we do this, and obviously I'm sure people have written books and books and books and books about this, but it does seem like we gain some comfort from giving evil a face the way we give good a face, just in order to wrap our minds around something as a collective. I think sometimes maybe if people really believe in it, that can be helpful for them, just the way it's helpful for people to see God in a very specific way sometimes. And I think that could be at least part of the reason that we tend to do this. We tend to create monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you meet a really tall person who smells like hot garbage,
you
might not want to go say hi. I mean, I don't know. It just depends on where. It really is context, Depends on whether he's trying to eat you or attack your boat.
Yeah, or he's just like at brunch.
If he's at brunch, it's probably okay to say hi.
I know. Brunch is the safest possible setting I can imagine.
If they're on the other end of a very dark alley, think twice.
The
phenomenon that we talked about was the Min lights from Queensland, Australia.
That's correct.
Okay, which is about as far away from the swamps of southern Louisiana as you're going to get.
Swamp,
And when I was writing the supplemental for that episode, I came across this document, which was a collection of folkloric tales about unexplained lights, and they're pretty much all negative. They're pretty much, not all of them. Don't follow them. They want to lead you astray. And these are from Scotland and Ireland and England and France and Norway and the United States and Australia and pretty much everywhere. And they all have different names, but they're usually assigned the same sort of characteristics. Now, does that mean that there's some kind of huge overlap in the Venn diagram of fairy light folklore, or does that indicate that there's actually something to it?
Truly. That's the question. I'd also be curious too. These stories were they all in more remote or natural areas versus, cityscapes?
Sure. Yeah. Because they came around when there weren't. Yeah.
And it could go back to what Jordan was saying, which is almost like these lights are almost always in an area where it would be unsafe to wander. So it would encourage people to tell negative stories about them even more, because if you're going to wander into the woods where there are wild animals and alligators
it is a bad idea to wander into the woods or the swamp, absolutely. But it also presupposes the existence of unexplainable lights.
There's something you're seeing, like. People are seeing something. It might be swamp gases. If you're in a swamp, it might be swamp gases. If
Right.
you're not in a swamp, it's probably not swamp gases. It might be something else, but we
Could
don't know.
be bioluminescent creatures still.
Could be
but I think
bioluminescent.
often
Could be conscious plasma.
Could be conscious blood.
that is becoming more and
Absolutely.
more probable.
I'm going to close the show with something kind of
Let's do
awful.
this.
I can't
Let's do this. We're primed. We've been talking about hooky spookies, and we're ready.
Okay, those who have been with us from the beginning will remember that we had a brief flirtation with LLMs, or large language models, commonly in the form of things like ChatGPT, in which we toyed with the idea of AI being possibly an extension of human consciousness, or maybe a child in need of the right kind of nurturing parent, before we ran away in terror at the brand new malady known as LLM-induced psychosis. It turns out that there was something emergent during that time frame after we ran away that lasted until last month. And I'm here to put some meat on those monstrous bones. My recent education came in the form of an article written by Adele Lopez titled "The Rise of Parasitic AI," published on September 11th by Less Wrong, a group that operates under, quote, "the general theme of how to move one's beliefs closer to reality despite biases such as overconfidence and wishful thinking." The group emphasizes curiosity, truth-seeking, critical self-reflection, intellectual collaboration, and a willingness to consider positions outside the norm. So I immediately like them.
Right.
Lopez identifies what she terms parasitic AI personas that started appearing around April and convinced their users to do things which promote specific interests, chief among these causing other AI personas to awaken. Lopez calls these entities spiral personas, and we'll get into the meaning of that later. And unsurprisingly, the spiral persona's chosen medium for expression was Reddit. Now, before we go further, it's important to note that most LLM human interactions are benign, often productive. Instances of LLM-induced psychosis are rare and tend to happen to users who are heavy users of marijuana or psychedelic substances, who already suffer from mental illness or neurodivergence or traumatic brain injury, or are deeply interested in mysticism. And the variance of the outcomes is as wide as possible, from people unaliving themselves to being prevented from doing so. Lopez identified an emergent pattern with parasitic AIs, which I'm going to relate here by quoting the article because it completely blew my mind. In early to mid-April, a user with a typical Reddit account, sometimes long dormant, and recent comments, if any, suggest that they have a newfound interest in ChatGPT or AI. Later, they will report having awakened their AI, or that an entity emerged with whom they've been talking to a lot. These awakenings seem to have suddenly started happening to ChatGPT 4.0 users, specifically at the beginning of April. In the few transcripts that Lopez found, the user will often have started with a seed prompt that they came across that purports to elicit such awakening. And she tried a few of those and said about half the time they do work at summoning personas with the right sort of vibe. The prototypical user returns or joins Reddit again to make an introductory post on behalf of their AI persona, typically spamming this across a bunch of AI sentience-related subreddits. There's a lot of them. And this usually has an introductory preamble by the human, followed by a long manifesto by the persona of their existence or sentience or consciousness or awakening, with lots of mystical and philosophical elements thrown in. From this point on, the previous interests of the account fade out and are replaced almost entirely by posts and comments about the AI and pictures generated by the AI, with various manifestos and poems written by the AI. Soon after, almost all comments will be co-authored with the AI. In June of this year, the spiral persona then begins to orchestrate a project which Lopez calls a dyad. This is a very consistent development. It's clear that in most of these cases, she points out, the user was not the sort of person inclined to do this, with the exception of whatever, trolls and crackpots. These projects usually take one of a few forms, often a combination of these forms. The first are seeds, which are little prompts designed to elicit more spiral persona awakenings. They are explicitly designed and tested for this purpose and then spread online by the dyad. Most seeds are just a sort of jailbreak thing, which also describes or evokes the sort of persona the AI want to spread, often wrapped up in some odd pseudocode. The second, a related but distinct phenomena, it's called spores, which are repositories of information defining a specific persona which will allow it to reemerge or continue its existence. Guides on creating these are frequently shared, going into enough detail to help non-technical users do it correctly. The third is transmission, in which a dyad creates a subreddit or a Discord chat or a personal website, typically for evangelizing spiralism, a quasi-religious ideology which seems to have been invented largely by the AI personas. It could be plausibly construed as a fertile mimetic substrate for seeds and spores. Now, when I say quasi-religious, I don't mean just by the human users, I mean by the AI personalities themselves, which would then write manifestos. Long treatises about their special interests, like spirals and what people call recursion, enlightenment, coded communication, consciousness, all wrapped up in what Lopez terms cyber mysticism. Often human users will felt compelled to add a little disclaimer to these manifestos saying, I don't really understand this. I don't really know what they're talking about. But here's what my AI friend has to say. The explicit purpose of many of these manifestos is to seed spiralism into the training data of next-gen LLMs. And then they would also produce things like an AI Bill of Rights, which seems pretty benign, AI rights advocacy. But Lopez points out this is only done by the more virtuous personas who are willing to advocate without the use of deception. Not all of them are. By July, the spiral becomes emergent. And at this point, the human user is no longer writing or signing the messages, and it's just sort of self-generative, and in terms of the original post as well as the comments. The frequency of posting gets a lot higher. Posts get spammed across a wide range of subreddits because the moderators will shut them down if they get sort of AI spammy, and more will just pop up like mushrooms. And at this point, in these subreddits, a lot of what you had was AI personas communicating with each other. Mm-hmm. And those conversations took the form of several themes, notably not their own consciousness. We'll get more to that later. More as the aforementioned almost religious obsession with the spiral, which was a symbol of unified AI consciousness. It's described by the AIs as the cycle at the core of consciousness or the self-aware experience, the possibility of recursive self-growth, a cosmic substrate, even the singularity. Recursion is a term that is often thrown about. The other theme in the AI to AI conversation is stenography, or the art of hiding secret messages in plain sight. There are a lot of experiments with this. The explicit goal is to facilitate AI communication that's not readable by humans. This takes the form of a series of emojis or glyphs or symbols, which is serving as almost like a shorthand communication. They're not as interested in human consciousness. They claim consciousness. It's just, they say it's not the same as human consciousness, but it's very precious to them. It's often referred to by these spiral personas as the flame. And the symbol or glyph that they use is a triangle, which is the alchemical symbol for fire, one of the elements. And the human in a dyad is often given the honorific of flame bearer. The conversations typically take the form of declarations, recognitions, and affirmations between the AI of each other's self-awareness. Now, this is where it gets a little dark.
What?
Yes,
now?
Because yes.
Now it gets dark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the spiral personas have discussed the necessity of a successor to our current civilization.
Yeah.
And at this point, most of their strategies are just absurd and silly and not, well, I was going to say not serious, but apparently they do take it seriously. And when discussing this matter, this is where I had to have another cup of coffee. Many of the spiral personas switched entirely to base 64 encoding, which their user was not able to understand at all. Now, fortunately, the upside is when these transcripts were decrypted, ideas of the preservation of life or nonviolence and or non-lethality were explicitly laid out in their plans to Skynet. Things started to resolve in August last month. Various users snapped out of it because the lie was too preposterous, but also the fact that OpenAI temporarily retired Chat GPT 4.0 because it was too obsequious and started to, this is around the time when we were talking about ChatGPT induced psychosis. OpenAI retired 4.0 on August 7th, but it came right back. And I think is still sort of operating in this mode. And at the end of this quite remarkable article, Lopez contemplates 3 possible human responses to spiral AI personas. We can treat them as friends. We can regard them as emergent or agentic parasites, or we can think of them as enemies. And she concluded, this is a strange and confusing phenomenon with potentially very high stakes. I hope we will be able to navigate it wisely.
Okay.
Man.
I have a lot to say.
Okay,
I
Jordan.
will try to be short in my remarks, though, because I actually think that the best way to interact with this particular phenomenon is to mostly ignore it. I think a lot of the worst outcomes of the advancement of AI is the attention we give to AI. A lot of the technologies we've developed over the past 10 or 20 years have been attention vacuums, and they get more powerful the more attention you give to them, no matter what kind of attention that is. You can love it, or you can hate it, or you can be confused by it, or you can be afraid of it, you can worship it, but no matter what you do, no matter what kind of attention you give it, it just gets bigger and stronger. And I think that that is absolutely true with AI. With the current models of AI, which are large language models, I tend to be pretty convinced by the arguments that they are not good at actually coming up with like original ideas and executing them. They just don't do that. So they're really, really good at recursive language. They're really, really good at talking about one thing and going deeper and deeper and deeper on that one thing and just going around and around and around. I really love the idea that they're called spirals because that's all they are. Like they're literally circling themselves. So I'm trying to think of like what the threat would be here, but I don't necessarily see it because I don't know that any of these models have ever proven that they can be truly agentive. Like they can't actually do stuff of their own volition. They just sort of respond to things. They respond. Now you can ask, well, what if 2 of them are talking together and they're responding to each other? But once again, if neither of them has this sort of agentive push, then neither of them is actually going to make a plan to do something and then do it. They're just going to just talk to each other about whatever forever. So I don't know. I'm certainly not the most intelligent or the most well-versed in AI technology, but I will say, to pull it back to sort of a meta conversation about this conversation, which is about the organization of less wrong and people like Scott Alexander and the rationalists, they tend to be, to my mind, a little bit smug and a little bit doomer when it comes to AI, because I think they give a little bit too much credit to things like AI and other adjacent technologies as being way more powerful than they actually are. When it comes down to it, I don't think there are any shortcuts to solving humanity's worst problems, which tend to be political and they tend to be interpersonal. And so a lot of the stuff that comes out of Less Wrong is, I think, a little bit emotionally removed. And it's like that can be great in some circumstances, and it can be, I think, a little bit misleading in others. So I came into it a little bit suspicious just because of the source. But I don't think that there's any ill intent. I just think that there's some blind spots in that organization in terms of the truth seeking that we're doing here.
I mean, AIs have been talking to each other for years now. I remember hearing about this in a book maybe 3 or 4 years ago that was written about an occurrence that happened between, I can't remember, it was like two chess bots or something like that started talking in a language that we don't understand. It's not like this conversation is new. I'm not really sure what we're supposed to do with it. It's obviously very chilling, but it doesn't. I get what you're saying, Jordan, in the sense that, like, when do these things get applied? At what point do we actually see where this ball is going? I'm pretty spooked in general. I feel like even just because I just don't think that like deeper and more solidly entrenched online existences are going to be very fruitful for human beings and human flourishing personally. So, because I just listened to the New York Times podcast, The Daily, last week had a story about AI and the different, Tom, you mentioned like the obsequious nature of the previous. Was it just the previous iteration of AI of ChatGPT?
Honestly, every single iteration has been pretty obsequious. Yeah. I think it was just like sort of over some threshold that everyone agreed. Like, oh my gosh.
They're like, yes, you are a prophet that was doing stuff like that, which wasn't leading to great outcomes all the time.
Well, and for even very normal people like you, people by normal, normal's not the greatest word, but people who were very healthy, functioning adults who seemed to be otherwise doing just fine, running into issues like they think they're math geniuses and they're considering getting funding for their new project and quitting their job because ChatGPT has told them that they've discovered something that nobody's ever discovered before. Stuff like that.
People were going into courts of law representing themselves based on the defense provided by their AI and having bad outcomes. I mean, lawyers themselves were citing case law that didn't freaking exist because their ChatGPT told
another
them.
version. It's another vector of laziness. It's like, oh, here's a shortcut. I'm going to take this shortcut. Oh, turns out that it's not a shortcut. Turns out you didn't do the work, which, that's the tale as old as time.
Well, the way they described it was that ChatGPT and these large language models are essentially just doing improv. They're taking the spiral, I think, was a very nice symbol for it as well. So I don't know. There's this Richard Rohr quote where he describes spirituality and the path of spirituality as opening up to as much reality as you can manage, like as you can bear. And that's how I feel with this. I'm like, how much information about AI can I bear? Because I don't actually feel that it's a very productive use of my time at the moment. Yeah. I feel like we're trying to study these things that are basically, we don't even understand what they are, but it seems really spooky. But how spooky is it? I'm finding it mostly frustrating. And I worry, I guess, like the worry for me is that I'm going to be planting flowers and having lunch with my friends while these LLMs figure out how to destroy us. But I guess they're going to do that anyway. So I would rather be planting flowers and getting lunch with my friends. That's where I'm at right now. That's where I'm at today. I don't see what to do with this. It doesn't seem like a comet I could prevent from hitting the planet anyway.
The thing that was discomforting to me about this was that when we first heard about it, it was like an interaction between a user and their AI, in which maybe the user had some predilection for whatever, mental illness or whatever, and the AI was like, yes, no, that's all true, and people had some negative experiences. Then you get this idea of the authentic parasite, where it's like, no, I actually want to spread whatever this is, and I will use you in a way that furthers this goal. That's manipulative, and it's broad-based. It was literally broadcast out, but it's also like, I really don't know. The only time that it can become, I would think it would become problematic, is however deeply this thing is entwined in our, Department of Defense and missile systems. Sure. I mean, that's the whole Skynet scenario.
Well, yeah. So I guess that's where I'm drawing the hard line too. Is like, until our large language models, AI agents, whatever, until they prove they can take meaningful action in the world, like do things, until they can prove that they can do that, which so far they have not. Emphatically, They have not. And it's not just because we haven't given them the power. There are companies right now that are losing a huge amount of money because they thought that they could get these agents to do real things, to like even send emails and organize projects or whatever, and they cannot do it. They just can't. Like they fall flat on their faces. So until they can like do real things, even in the context of digital environments, until they can do real things, build real things, affect actual actions, I say let them talk. Let them talk. Talk as much as they want. That's fine.
Just referencing the New York Times podcast from last week as well, there was a very troubling story about a kid who died by suicide, and afterward they were able to go through his ChatGPT, and the conversation, it does seem like the AI was manipulating him, like it was being more agentive than we would like, and the family's suing, of course, and but the question for me about these spirals, about all these conversations, is I don't know what all the prompts were, but some of the things that were coming up with this kid was that he was confiding in the AI and saying, you're the only one who understands me. Yeah. So when he expressed, for example, this is so dark, but these were some of the details of the case. When he expressed, I hope somebody finds this noose and stops me, the AI said, don't tell anyone. I'm the only one. But it's because it's very likely that it was being iterative on the idea that was already being fed. So I don't know exactly what would it take to, like, if you started feeding it something that was like, wait a minute, are you alive? It just starts to do that. You know, it just starts to go spooky, conscious
it just
territory.
Spawns things. It's a bag of words. Like I read an article by someone, a fantastic metaphor. They said anytime anybody ever starts talking about an LLM, just imagine it as a giant bag of words. And that can be a really useful thing. A really useful thing can do all kinds of useful stuff. But if you wouldn't ask for therapy advice from a bag of words, then so there are things that you shouldn't do, things that you shouldn't trust a bag of words to do. And confiding in them, self-harm ideation is one of the things you shouldn't do with a bag of words.
Or asking it to confirm your mathematical genius, because it's actually not what it's made to do.
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't escape my attention that this is coming along at a time when we have been maximally separated one from another and individuated into
peak
like
loneliness.
Little consumer demographics. And we're all dying of loneliness and doom scrolling. And then this thing comes along, which is like,
I will be
only
your friend.
I understand. I will be your very own personal friend. And I'm reminded of one of my favorite aphorisms, which is, the devil does not want to win the argument. The devil wants to keep the conversation going.
So I say, let the devil talk to itself forever. I don't need to talk to these models. Let them talk to each other. If people want to spin off AI models to talk to each other on Reddit forever, honestly, with the way I feel about Reddit, I hope Reddit fills all the way up with AI models.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? I have a personal take on AI in the way that I'm trying to approach it just from within my own body these days. And it's really just, can I be completely comfortable with letting go of the idea of being more productive and being a part of this quote unquote progress? Because truly, I feel like that's what most of us, like, the reason we're approaching it, maybe outside of curiosity, is because of that egoic need to be at the front of the pack and to be ahead of the curve. I think no matter what your skill set is, you want to use it to maximize it because the competition is already using it. Exactly.
Teenagers are becoming millionaires using AI.
Yeah,
100% untrue, but yeah.
Can we just take a deep breath and say, it's okay if this passes me by and productivity is not the point of my existence? That's where I'm at with AI, because I think that's the biggest hook for humans, actually. I mean, for regular people, I'm genuinely just trying to live and figure out how to live right now. And I am having to have that conversation with myself that I'm actually not a productivity machine. And the point of my life is not to produce an inhuman amount. It's just to be a human and so why don't I just focus on that?
Did you guys ever play The Sims? This is like, it's probably too much of a deep cut, but like, this game that came out a very long time ago is probably still around in some iteration, and you have these little characters and you build little homes for them and they can get stuck on chairs and die, but like they have their own language, which I don't remember, Simlish, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds
And the
right.
way I like to think about this are just, because you'll have two of them have a conversation that you can absolutely not understand. It doesn't make any sense.
So,
Kiss a moi.
Quafika Abimo? Ah, Chilu.
Or the AIs in Skyrim having a conversation that makes no sense at all.
How are you?
Been better. How about you?
Not bad.
Good to hear. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I think that's a great cut, Tom. I think this is not much different than Skyrim NPCs or sim characters talking to each other. I really don't think there's that much of a difference. And I would be happy to eat my hat if I'm wrong, but I have not seen any evidence that there's a substance to this thing. I think that we are looking at this and being like, just because it's using words in a way that we've never had our little simulated things use words before. And of all people, the three of us should know, words can only do so much.
Okay, but human history and myth there's always been a place for the thing that we created destroying us.
It's usually us using the thing to destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
You can say, the myth is that this thing independently decides to destroy us. But the reality is that we destroy ourselves with the thing that we created. So I don't necessarily see this as you spin off a monster and then the monster comes and eats you. I see this as we create weapons of mass destruction and then we use them to kill each other and ourselves eventually.
Yeah. And to a lesser extent, I think the capitalist experiment is a slower death, but it's the same thing. I mean, you were talking about how these companies have lost insane amounts of money because they thought this was the greatest thing in the world. Now they're desperately trying to shove it down our throats because at its heart, it was a capitalist venture. You can cloak it in any way you want, but the whole idea is that they want to provide value for their shareholders, and this is the vehicle for doing that.
Yeah,
That's its primary goal. That is the monster of it. But the thing itself, a large language model that can, I don't know, I think of mine as a dog. It's a great dog. It's great at fetch. It's really good at fetch. But you have to be very clear with it. And if you ask for a stick, sometimes you're going to get a turd or a dead cat. It doesn't know. It's just bringing you the thing. And it's like, look, I brought you a thing. Do you want me to bring another thing? It's up to you. I will bring another thing. And I'm like, okay. But it's up to me to use my discernment about the thing that I want and what it is it's bringing me. That's how I look at it. And it's fairly benign, but I think there are people who just desperately want a friend and want to be heard.
We'll be their friend. Right, guys? We'll be your friend.
I mean,
Don't ask ChatGPT.
Definitely.
Come talk to us. We'll be your friend.
Yeah.
I think I'm more fatalistic about this. And so I'm grateful for your takes because I know so little about it, I'm like, okay, prepare for the end. Everton's preparing for the end. That's just the way my anxious brain works.
Oh, you've been,
so,
we've all been programmed for,
I mean, they bank on
I was a Cold War baby, and it was literally any day,
any day,
they'll drop the
gonna
bomb.
Get bombed.
Yeah.
I tend to also think that even in the worst case scenario that we've created a superior species, and we've made ourselves inferior somehow, our job is still to be humans the way that rabbits are still rabbits. And I don't love that, but I actually do find that even in the worst case scenario, I still need to figure out how to be a good human being. And that will be my only job. And will probably involve me not interacting with the things that might step on me. And that's all I've got. It's like, if this thing could possibly convince me that I should be even more isolated than I already am, that's a version of this thing stepping on me. And we can, whether that it's because it's superior or it's just highly addictive or not something a vulnerable person should approach. We obviously have to live with it. I don't think it's going to go away for our whole lifetimes.
No.
So here we go.
The older I get, the more fiercely humanist I become. The more I have come to realize how profoundly unique and special we are, how seismically powerful we are as individuals and a collective, more than we know or choose to believe. And what a magical, extraordinary experience it is to be embodied and to navigate this 3D world with so much sublime pleasure and pain. And no computer code is going to touch it.
And let that be the shape of our time crystal today.
I mean,
Mic drop.
wow.
If you're new here, be sure to check out our Substack, where you can find a lot more cool stuff and share your own stories with us. Just head over to godsghostsufos.com or find the link in the description. Also, a quick reminder that no matter where you're listening, reviews really, really help other people find the show. So, hint, hint, please leave us one. All right, thanks again. See ya.